Batya Porter, Horizon Realty. We finally got her on. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, totally. So you got in here, you made mention of Chris Evans. Shout out to Chris Evans. You just did a one-to-one with him, huh?
Yes, we met at Epoch Coffee off of West Loop, and that one was really great one-to-one. We did some brainstorming and just connected, and it's always nice to meet other like-minded people in a similar age and
Sure.
space in the way they run their business. So
Yeah,
definitely went well.
NIA is a wonderful, wonderful thing. I'm a member myself. That's how we connected. And so getting you on here now, because I try to do my very best to not do a lot of research or anything along those lines so that I can ask genuine questions and find out more about you. But before we started the camera stuff, you had made mention that you have been an agent now for 2 years, correct?
Yes, so actually the end of this month, end of October, will be my official 2-year renewal. Just finished all of my continuing education requirements.
Very nice.
So
I find, so a lot of what I do is, I am a lender, but the majority of what I try to do is I connect with agents, and we do a lot of things in regards to leads and sales trainings and everything. I've actually been to more real estate educational events and classes that I've spent thousands and thousands of dollars on. I've probably been to more than 90% of the agents out there. And I mention all of this because 3 years is like the sweet spot. So if you've already made it through the first 2, I'd say you've got about 12 more months and you're going to look back and go, all right, this was totally worth it. What made you decide to get into real estate?
So I actually I have some chronic pain issues.
Oh,
I have something called fibromyalgia, which just means my nerves don't function great.
gotcha.
So I have a lot of back and leg pain, and so as an adult, I've had to adjust what I thought my life was going to look like. I
Sure.
had a nannying business for 5 years, which I ran myself. I loved it. Worked with 7 to 10 different families, various needs, date nights, a couple days a week, and then during COVID, I just got a little burned out. Wasn't sure what was next for me. And 9 to 5 is hard with my health issues, but I definitely work 7 days a week now. So I
Yeah.
just tell myself it's more flexible. And my husband, we've been together since we were 15 and
Oh, wow.
20, almost 29 now. He's like, why don't you get your real estate license? You always sound like you're trying to sell us the apartments we rent ourselves. So I'm like, okay, I'll give it a try. And it was the hardest thing I've ever done, but the most rewarding. My first 6 months in real estate, I definitely would say were the most difficult because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And trying to add value to other people's experiences when you're that new is difficult. I also naturally wasn't the most confident before getting into real estate. So that was something that I had to take on as I gained the knowledge and education to really be able to provide value and advocate for people. So did 60 open houses my first year, the most in the brokerage, and learned so much that way. Learned how to connect with people and support and address their pain points and learn different market conditions, tax rate variations. And then this year has been my year of education and networking. So I have working on my 8th real estate certification now and have a property tax certification. And just the more I educate myself, the more I'm able to point out potential issues before they arise because I'd rather my clients not buy a house than buy the wrong one.
Yeah, for sure. And especially as you get into the business longer, those skeletons tend to come out of the closet
yeah.
if you do it the wrong way. So how did you, when you originally started, I mean, what did you do to generate new business?
The open houses for year one were the primary way of lead generation. I realized pretty quickly that I am not a cold caller. I do best face to face. I'm a little bit sensitive, so I don't like to be,
Okay.
yelled at and,
Right.
dealt with the typical cold call vibes. And so realizing that early on, I knew I had to layer my business in every other aspect. And open houses were uncomfortable at first too. I mean, anything is when you're not used to it. But
Yeah.
probably about 15 to 20 in, I started getting in a really good groove and not having that pressure and that weight. It really wasn't about me. It's about the house and it's about the potential client and their experience. So just taking that pressure off and, if it's a good mutual fit, it'll be, it'll happen. If not, that's okay as well. And I noticed that the conversion rates go up, the less stress and pressure you put on it and the more you just let things be very organic. And I also joined in the toughest market in about a decade. So
That's
I really
true.
had to learn a level of hustle and drive that I'm glad I didn't join earlier because I would have never had to build these processes into my business to be able to obtain clients. And a lot of people I met year one weren't ready until this year. And then there are even some who are now pushing off till next year. And so staying in touch with people, staying connected and treating them as people in a relationship and not as a transaction, that goes a long way. So whenever their time is right, whether it's today, tomorrow, or 5 years, it's truly an honor to be able to help somebody with such a big life choice. So it's just getting out there enough and layering your business and your connections enough so everything starts coming together in its own time and you fill your pipeline enough so things are consistent as people are doing what they need to do for their lives and their timelines.
I gotcha. You mentioned creating relationships and if it's a good fit. What do you, I mean, obviously, you want to help as many people as you can, but who do you seem to gravitate towards, or who gravitates towards you as far as a client is concerned?
So it's interesting. I've had some clients my age, millennial, late 20s to mid 30s, but the majority of my clients have actually been 45 and up.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's I'm a very honest person and I'm very straightforward, but I deliver information in a way that's emotionally sensitive. So I'll tell you what you need to know, but I'll say it and relay it in a way that's taking into account everything you're going through and the emotion that is behind that. Because that connects with people on a different level. And so telling them the things they need to hear, not what's making me the most money or making me look the best. I've noticed that authenticity. Maybe, older generation are a little better at sniffing out the BS from some people, so they're able to pick up on that. And then they've also had maybe negative experiences, so they're able to compare it and pretty quickly see the difference in the way I operate versus people who are younger. They're not really as well versed about the process at all. So just getting started and
Sure.
Finding those common interests. But I've had clients of all different walks of life and ages, and it's really just finding what matters most to them and adjusting my approach and my process to best serve their goals.
I see. And so being newer, I would envision the majority of the clients you're working with right now are buyers.
So year one, yes.
Okay.
Year two, and I have 3 listings right now. I had a listing earlier this year as well. So I've seen that shift as I've gained the knowledge and the education to where it seems like I am attracting more of the listing opportunities now, and my conversion rate has been about 100% on any of the ones I've interviewed so far. Because
What do you like doing better? I'm sure you enjoy both,
they're
but
so
given the choice.
they're so different. It's funny, I shifted to a heavy list business in a market where listings are sitting for a lot longer, and you really
Right.
have to go above and beyond. So, on one hand, in a typical market, you market well, you price well, you advertise well, and it draws in the buyers. Right now, you got to go above and beyond. I mean, I geofence all my listings. I do open houses the first month. I do events there. So anything I can do to bring in traffic, but the market is the market and the demand is the demand. So all you can do is maximize that. So I'd say there's less running around on the listing side, but there's a bit more pressure, in my opinion, just because I do take on the weight of my clients and
Yeah, I
their
would
situations,
agree.
their wants and needs, and that home needs to be sold for whatever reason. Where versus the buy side, of course, they want and need to purchase as well, but there's a different level of stake at place because equity is already involved when you're selling your home versus
Right.
when you're buying for the first time.
I love that you mentioned the geofencing because I find that a lot of agents don't really invest in their business. It's like the only business that I know of where you can get started and you basically don't have to have any initial investment. You can't do anything else. Even something like a daycare requires, initial investment. So to hear that you are willing to spend money to, have your business thrive is it's not unusual, but it's not common. So kudos to you for that. The geofencing that you mentioned, just for guests and everything, because I have agents on here 2 to 3 times a week, and we're constantly trying to figure out ways to generate new business. I know what geofencing is, but can you kind of give an explanation so that people that are kind of listening or watching this know what you're talking about?
Absolutely, and don't quote me on this because I'm not the most tech savvy or well versed. But basically, it is an advertisement that we map a certain radius from each one of the listings. So, for instance, my Elgin listing, it's about a 40-mile radius. It's a little more rural out there. I have one in Round Rock. I believe that's about a 15-mile radius. And an advertisement, I have a flyer and then also a video walkthrough. I do a drone videography for all my listings as well. We have that sent out to people's devices. It, from what I'm told, shows up their weather app, social media, et cetera.
Correct.
And it's flooding that market with that property. They're already seeing it on Zillow. They may see the open house signs. They may or may not have an agent, but the more eyes, the better. Whether they end up buying it or their friend or their neighbor or their cousin or their coworker, doesn't really matter. It's just getting that property out there to the masses, but in a way that's strategic and targeted, especially in areas where maybe you're not getting as many people moving from California or out of state to that part of town or that neighborhood. You're getting more local traffic of people renting and then buying, or buying their first home and then upsizing. Another thing I also have realized that most real estate agents don't do is mail marketing. And that is something that I started doing in February, and 6 months in, I got my first call from it, and that's currently my listing in Round Rock. So
That's
I'm
awesome.
really I'm very business minded. I'm always thinking of how I can connect with people in ways that are very organic. I don't do pushy. So if I'm going to build my business, I want to do it in a way that feels like me. And I did an 8-week mail campaign in February with 300 homes most likely to sell based on various equity factors. And now I do a once a month postcard to those same households.
And assuming that deal sells, I mean, that'll pay for that entire campaign and then some, right?
Absolutely, for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, that'll pay for a whole year's worth.
Well, like I said, I got to hand it to you because I'm with you. Know that you have to invest in your business, and to hear you kind of say some of the things that you're saying, I agree. You're business minded, and unfortunately, most agents aren't. So I think you're going to do just fine. So when you are going on your social media and you're like, why in the world do I keep seeing this home? Well, that's because she's watching you. Where Batya is not a common name. Where did that come
Yes.
from?
It's Hebrew, actually.
Oh.
It means daughter of God in Hebrew.
No kidding. And so your parents named you that. How did they come up with that?
So it was, my family's Jewish, and
Okay.
it was my great-grandmother's name. And in the Jewish faith, they don't do juniors, so they only name after someone after they've passed. So
Gotcha.
I now have like 7 other younger female cousins that all have the same name, but
No way.
I was the second OG, so I'm
Okay.
claiming that.
Right on.
And as a kid, I hated it. It was so unique. It gets butchered all the time, but I've leaned into it as an adult. Nobody else has it, so
Right?
especially probably not in Texas.
So I find that children growing up typically will always try to shorten a name as much as humanly possible. How do you shorten Batya? Has anybody ever shortened it and given you a nickname?
Yeah, so two nicknames, and then, well, 3. One of them's longer, so it's kind of counterintuitive. B, that's easy.
Okay.
And then Bot, like the first half of my name. And then my uncle, I don't know where he got this one, but he calls me Beezer. So that's even longer. He's
Beezer.
a unique character, so I let it pass. I don't
like
even
that.
know that he knows my real name anymore, but it's fine.
So yeah, back to real estate.
Yes.
No, actually, not back to real estate. What do you do when you're not doing real estate?
Whew, that is a good question. When I'm not doing real estate and I'm not thinking about real estate or my clients or how to grow my business, I really enjoy spending time with family.
Okay.
I love to volunteer. I do, there is an elementary school in Round Rock called Gaddis Elementary. I do monthly snack donations there. I've been doing that since last school year. My client's daughter works there, so I got connected with them and
Okay.
eventually plan to turn that into an official nonprofit, expand it a bit further, but just love helping others. I also do adult paint by numbers, so I have no artistic capabilities except
Okay.
when I follow in the lines.
Got
So
it.
I buy them off Amazon, and they're a great stress reducer.
Interesting.
Very creative, but I'm not very artistic. So I know my lanes, and I know it'll look good at the end when I'm following the instructions. So I really enjoy that as well.
It's funny. No, any children?
Not yet,
Okay.
but definitely in the plans in the next few years. So just trying to get my business to a point where I can start delegating and having a little more free
Have
time.
you had conversations with the teachers and everything along those lines in regards to you being a real estate agent? Has that done anything for your business? The teachers for the
yes,
snack stuff?
Yes, and so what I've done is it's in a very organic, low, same as I usually am, low pressure way, because
Yeah.
the goal of that donation and volunteering was to help, not to gain business. But I've seen that secondary effect of
Sure.
every time I do those monthly drop offs, I go myself. They're strict about who can go in and out of the school, so I facilitate it on my own. And I've already had conversations just at the beginning of this year. One of the head teachers walked me around the school, and she's like, I already own a home, but whenever I'm ready to sell, I know who to call. We're
Yeah,
just so
that's awesome.
appreciative of you. And she introduced me to all the kids, and I cried in my car after. I was like, it was very emotional, but I love doing for others, and the more I grow, the more I want to give back to the communities that are helping me grow in my business.
Yeah, we give a lot of incentives on the lending side to, teachers and stuff like that. So I've been involved with a couple different agents, one of them that is a past teacher, and we've definitely tried to, help and been a part of that market, and we've done donated school supplies and all that kind of stuff. And to your point, I mean, the main goal is for the charity itself, but it has turned into business. So I was just curious to see if that was something that was working for you as well.
Yes, and I do have certain buyers as well within that school within the teachers that I've been working with who are hopefully going to be ready in the next 6 months to a year. So it's definitely everything I do in my business, I'm very realistic when I implement it. So when I did the mail marketing campaign, I was expecting to wait up to a year to get any bites. And when I do anything, I do enough research to where I'm not trying to rush the results, because if you quit too early, you'll never see if it really works.
Right.
And in a market like today where everything I'm doing is taking a little bit longer than if, the market conditions were a bit different, I really have to give myself and my time and my investments, a chance to work and do what they need to do. And so I've seen that as well, even in networking. I started networking about a year ago, and 5 months in, I got my first listing from networking. So that was really exciting to be able to build that trust and value in a space where there are other great agents as well, but for people to be able to see what I bring to the table and why I'm unique. That's been a very cool experience, and it's helped me personally gain a level of confidence that I didn't have pre-real estate.
That's awesome. I love that you're doing different things. I've run into a lot of agents that are just real estate agents, and they're kind of like, I'm here, and that obviously that doesn't work. So we've covered the geofencing, the mail marketing, obviously networking. Is there anything else that you're currently doing that is helping generate new business for you?
Yes. So the best $42 I ever spent was 2 magnets on the side of my little RAV4, and I ended up getting a listing from those.
No
I got
way.
a call, and I last week got a call from a prospective buyer. So you never know. Some brokerages don't allow the signage. Mine's cool with it. So it's just one of those things. I have to make sure my husband doesn't drive around crazy, though, because we do share our car still. And I threaten if I get a bad review because he drove crazy, it's going to be a problem. So
I dated a real estate agent that had magnets on her car, and she had them on her car for a while. And when she went to sell the car, she took the magnets off, and you could see the color difference from the sun. So make sure you move those around. That's my tip to you.
Yes, I do appreciate that tip for sure. And it's something, too, that even with current clients, it looks, they see you coming. They know that, they know to expect you. They know that's your car. It adds that layer of safety. And when I'm running around and doing errands in certain neighborhoods, especially ones that I work in a lot, they start seeing you, and now I'm getting people. They're like, "Oh, I saw you on the street.
I saw you drive by today."
I've never had that. I'm not from Austin. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Actually,
oh, no way.
Lived here for 9 years, but never had a
hate
community.
Pittsburgh.
That's okay.
I'm from Cleveland.
Oh, interview over.
Right.
My first Steelers game, I was 11, and was a Steelers-Browns game, and let's just say stuff went down at the beginning, and I got some beer splattered on me.
Yeah, I bet. Browns fans are not friendly. No, that's Pittsburgh. Gosh. Well, you're here now. How long have you been in Austin?
9 years.
Oh, okay.
And I love it.
Yeah, same. I've been here for 5.
I don't do the cold. I was born in it, but I'm not built for it, if that makes sense. So I love the warmth, and I love the energy that Austin has, the opportunity, and I've just met so many amazing people. And to be able to build a community in a place that I didn't grow up in, that feels pretty awesome as well. I never felt that acceptance or connection to this degree. And when you live in apartments, you really, you don't meet your neighbors a lot of times. You're not really connected with what's going on around you. So networking has really allowed me, and just connecting with my clients, staying in touch. I mean, we get brunch. I stop by the house with little gifts. I really care about my clients. It's not like, oh, you close and like, peace out, check you later. I really want to, I'm invested in you. We work together, whether a week, a month, or a year, and I care about your goals and your future and your happiness. So I want to be involved in hearing about that. And I guess back to the marketing, my last little thing that I do, a little different and unique, is I've done where I give out little goodies. I'll go to a local dog park and I'll hand out dog treats when people are leaving. And I have my business card on the back, and on the front it says "Forever grateful for your business" with some paws, a little corniness. But
No, that's cool.
and when people leave, I'm like, "You want some free dog treats?" And there's no spiel or pitch or bother. And if anything, they're like, "Oh, are you selling these?" Or you're like, or
What's
who are
the
you? What's the
catch, right?
catch? And I'm
Yeah.
like, no, they're free. It's not my dog's birthday. I don't even have a dog, but I'm here just hanging out and connecting. And I handed out 100 in an hour.
Wow.
So it's like cost me $15 and made people's day. And maybe a
Yeah.
few people said their dogs were allergic or were on the phone, but
Right.
very low pressure, high connection. And I also do community events. So I've gotten vendor booths and I just give out free stuff. And I have a giveaway if people want to sign up for the giveaway and I follow up with them afterwards, great. But there's no catch with that either. I'm not going to blow them up all the time about it. But that's been a great way as well to just, and people are thrown off. They're not used to getting free
Yeah.
stuff with no catch. So they're like, wait a minute, what are you doing? But it works. And I like I said, the passion and the energy is best communicated face to face. So I love doing those face to face events.
Yeah, I can sense you do enjoy what you do. I mean, and that's important, of course. What do you, you mentioned apartment living and everything along those lines. I mean, do we have big goals to buy a home yourself?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hopefully within the next 2 years. Not quite sure where. I've had people, they're like, oh, every time you go to a house, do you look at it for you? And I'm a very realistic person. Like, I don't window shop in a place that I know I don't want to spend the money on.
Right,
so
right.
I'm waiting until I'm fully in that space to start actually actively looking at what could or wouldn't be for me. But I've learned so much, and I'm grateful for my clients for that as well, because each experience that they go through and each journey and each new thing that we learn, I'm able to utilize that for my own experiences. So I'm protecting myself in the future by protecting my clients right now and learning from learning from other agents' mistakes or
Yeah.
oversights. And I mean, one of my clients, he bought his first investment property and his agent didn't read the deed restrictions and look into the HOA covenants and conditions, and they didn't allow short-term rentals in that entire subdivision. So had it
Yeah,
for
that's
almost
not
2
good.
years, took a loss, on a 12-month tenant, and then met me and was like, got to let this go. And so those met people whose homes have been foreclosed on. They were pushed into an area with a really high tax rate at the top of what they could afford, or had to sell at a loss, and now they're back to renting with no savings. So I take those stories very seriously, and I use that to fuel me in the way I educate myself and grow, so I can make sure that nobody who works with me has that experience.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Again, applauding you for all the things that you're doing as far as the business is concerned. Did you just utilize things that were from the other business that you had been in when it was daycare, or do you have a mentor? Like, where did you come up with all of this?
So a lot of it's in my head,
Okay.
but I will give credit to my family as well.
Okay.
They have a medical supply company where they sell like pregnancy tests, drug tests, doctor's gloves, and they ran the call center out of my grandma's house growing up. So they had about 8 employees. Up north, all the houses are really tall, so there was basement had call center,
Right.
second floor had call center. And I knew I didn't want that business because there was always fighting and stress within the family, but I saw that work ethic and the hustle and wanting to do for yourself and the possibilities. And so my mom said I tried to sell some blades of grass to them as a toddler for like a couple bucks a pop. They might have gone for it, I don't know, but I always had that, wanting to do lemonade sales and bake sales and be my own boss and do my own thing. And so seeing that growing up and then getting into the nannying space and learning the importance of building that trust. I mean, somebody's child, that's a huge level of trust for them to be comfortable, and seeing families not, after they get to know me, they're not reaching out to me the whole time because they know their child is good, and if there's an issue, I'll reach out. And so
Right.
seeing that shift and then going into real estate, it just translated really well. Kids taught me how to negotiate. I had to learn how to, readjust the way I delivered information to have a more optimal response and reduce tantrums. But as I'm not the parent, so there's only so much I can do.
Yeah.
So that really optimized my communication and helped me to better connect with people for sure. And then the business, I mean, I've never had a mentor. I honestly don't have the time for really much business books or podcasts. So most of it's just in my head, and I see the potential. And the downside of that is I see so much potential in things that I have to rein myself in and not try to implement 4 things at once and just focus on one and the gradual build up to avoid
Sure.
the burnout.
What's the next step for you, you think? Just keep doing what you're doing, or are there any big plans, small plans?
Yeah, so I guess small, medium planning to also start a podcast. So this was
Oh,
awesome. Don't
yeah.
worry. Well, I won't be your competition. You are amazing.
No, you're welcome to come on here anytime you want. I mean, I tell agents the main intention of this podcast is designed to create, social media content for agents, and because a lot of them either are afraid to get in front of the camera, or it's kind of almost like a, what's the phrase? Perfection is the killer of innovation.
Yes.
So people are like, oh, they'll stand in front of the camera, or they'll just edit and edit and edit. And I just feel like podcast is a great opportunity to not only get to know somebody, but it's a very organic conversation. And frankly, I'm able to pull so many good social media clips out of the podcast. And so, the initial kind of conversation that we have is always good because we're getting to know each other and it produces good content. But it's like going to the gym, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't just go once and then expect to see results. So I encourage all agents, come on in like at least every month and sit down. We can,
Don't worry, I'll be back.
yeah, we'll talk about the industry and all that kind of stuff. And there's currently 4 podcasts that operate out of this space. So yeah, in this particular
The
one,
podcast bot.
yeah, I mean, in this particular podcast, I mean, me personally, we have over 120 episodes we've done. So it's been pretty cool.
Wow, that's amazing.
What made you decide that you wanted to start a podcast?
So getting into networking, the best way networking works for you and your business is to genuinely take the time to get to know people. So I started doing so many one-to-one meetings, as we call it, for coffee or lunch, and just sitting with someone for 30 minutes or an hour and really learning about them and their business. Less of, oh, who do you know that you can buy, that needs to buy or sell, and more of, what made you start your business? What drives you? What are your passions? And then connecting organically, and then showing my value in a very organic way as well. I want to work with people who want to work with me. So doing that, and I just started realizing that we were having so many amazing conversations. I met with an appraiser and we're just deep diving on the appraisal process, and then have coffee with a lender, a financial advisor, a roofer. And I'm like, there's so much knowledge that we're sharing, and I wish I could just take this a little clip and just share it with everybody, because these are questions that people ask. And the conversation would just flow. When you find people that are on similar business wavelengths and like-mindedness in the way their ethics are and the way they treat people, it's a really cool experience that I'm still getting used to in the networking space, where you can just vibe and go back and forth and really connect on your industries and share tips and knowledge.
Well, yeah, and obviously off the podcast, if you have any questions about how to get all of this going and everything along those lines, I mean, it doesn't get any, what's the word? It doesn't get any more like professional than what we're doing here as far as all of the hardware that's associated with it. So depends on how far you want to go with it. But this is about as far as it gets. I mean, we could decorate the room or do that, but that's not going to do anything for the actual podcast itself. But I kind of wanted to ask you and move into, and I do get a lot of great clips from this as a real estate agent. Here we are a few weeks before the election, and we know that that's one of the big hangups that everyone's like, oh, no, wait till the election's over. What are you seeing in the marketplace? Give me some predictions. Tell me what you think. What are your buyers' sentiment? What are your sellers' sentiment? And what are you seeing right now in the market here with it being late October 2024?
So it's definitely been interesting, and as I've shifted more to the list side, I'm much more aware of stats, particularly in the areas where my listings are. So we are noticing an increase in average days on market universally. There are certain areas that are, very high demand, and if they're priced super well, they will get scooped up quickly. But overall, you'll see a home that's listed 120 days and it's closing at list price. That's not something we were seeing in previous markets. If it was on the market for more than a couple weeks, it was likely overpriced. Another thing I'm seeing is values are decreasing, which is unfortunate, especially on the seller side. I ran comps for a client who's not necessarily looking to list till maybe next year, but we're just keeping an eye on values. And within 6 weeks, his home value dropped $20K. And it's because 3 other homes closed in the neighborhood in the last 30 days within a 2-mile radius, all, super comparable, age range, square footage, et cetera, at lower value. And so because of current rates and current market conditions, we're seeing that homes in certain areas are having to be priced below value to get it closed, or even, a good bit below appraised value.
Wow.
So there, certain listings are appraised at X amount, and you're not seeing many bites until you're 30, 40K below that.
Right.
And so it's really not a matter, it's always a matter of what are the buyers willing to pay? The numbers are the numbers, but if you're seeing that buyers are more hesitant to pay,
And
the numbers decrease.
that's the value.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's one thing that we talk about a lot on here. When we look at the actual closed comparable sales, we don't see as much of a decrease in actual value. What we see a decrease in is the listed price versus what it ends up selling for. And yeah, I mean, a home is only worth what someone's willing to pay for it, right?
For sure. And we are seeing that prices went down a bit last year, but they are dropping a bit more even now in certain areas. And I did see an increase in foot traffic showings right after we had that recent rate cut.
Okay.
But it's so finicky right now. Now we're creeping up mid sixes again, and it has a lot of buyers still on pause.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing. You're trying to time. You want to
Do you
get in
think
with
the
the best.
rates is really going to be the thing that's going to be the determining factor?
To a degree, yes. I would say to a large degree, yes. And I think it's more just what people have in their own head, their own mindset.
What's the number?
If we can under 6, I'd say if we
Okay.
can 5.9 consistently and lower, I truly feel that we're going to start seeing some buyers seriously peek their heads out. And then, then they can buy down their rate maybe to the mid 5s, low 5s, depending on.
Where do you think the consumer came up with that number?
I think they came up with it based on how low we were seeing a few years ago, which isn't a great comparison because people were overpaying substantially. So prices were a lot higher, demand was much different, but that has shifted in the way people are perceiving things. The same way on the sell side, some sellers are like, well, last year or 2 years ago, my neighbor's house closed at this. Well, that's true, but the current market within the last 90 days is showing this price.
Yeah.
So things can shift at the drop of a hat, and we as a real estate agent don't have control over that. All we can do is educate and inform our clients as things shift. And so even though prices are a good bit lower, demand is lower. And I mean, one of my clients, I was able to negotiate $40,000 off the list price and $7,000 in seller concessions.
Wow.
And they paid buyer's agent commission as well. So I mean, there are deals to be made. Especially for homes that have been sitting for a while. But at the end of the day, the buyer has to be comfortable moving forward with the interest rate. And what many agents don't focus on is the emotional readiness of buying a home. So for me, if my client can afford it on paper, the pre-approval is there, but they don't feel ready, I'm not going to equity shame them and say, oh, you're going to waste $10,000 in rent over the next 6 months or a year because you're paying for your peace of mind.
Equity shame. I love that. I equity shame people all the time. I do. I'm guilty, but I'm definitely stealing that term. It's amazing. I love that. No, I agree with everything you're saying, and I think that it's always just interesting to me. Like, we saw rates in 2s and 3s, and we've gotten as high as like 6 and 7, and it's
8 last year.
Yeah, and it's just funny to me that you'd mentioned like 5.99. Like, I would agree with you. I think you're right. I just don't know where the public came up with that number.
Yeah.
Because when interest rates started to climb and we were in the 5s, people were like, oh, I really wish that rates were still in the 3s and 4s. And it's this like bargaining that I feel like the average consumer does. And I think the moral of the story really is, and you said it, but I want to dwell on it a little more, is consistency. And so I'm seeing people coming off the fence more now this year than I have over the last few years because we've kind of seen interest rates consistently stay in that 6 to 7% range. And people kind of go, fuck it. Like,
Yeah.
I can't wait forever.
Yeah.
And then, as we see, to your point, you see interest rates come down a little bit and people start to go, okay. And I, in my opinion, I think that, we know historically the average interest rate over the life of mortgage lending in the United States is 6.5%, which we're kind of right there, right? So we're in a time that is historically normal as far as rates are concerned. I'm a big believer that anybody who is hesitant in purchasing and tells you that it's because of interest rates is not either telling you the truth or even they haven't really thought about other things that are, making them not want to buy.
For sure.
Right? I relate it to cars, which is a much easier purchase to make because it's a lower dollar figure. I've never seen anybody ever not buy a car because they're concerned what interest rates are doing. Never. It's always about what's my payment?
Yeah.
What am I going to pay monthly to drive this car? And I wish that people would adopt more of that mentality when it comes to a mortgage because, again, your payment is what you pay monthly. You don't write a check and write 6.5%. You pay in dollars and cents on a monthly basis. And so to see people kind of hone in on the interest rate, and again, going back to the car, I've never seen someone that was like, yeah, I was going to buy a car, but, the rates are up now, so I'm going to hold off on buying a car because of interest rates. It is never a thing.
Yeah.
So.
And I think it's almost become other people were seeing other people with that concern, and then there was
that's
talked about,
that's what it is.
And it's become this thing
Right.
that it never was. Nobody knew about interest rates to this degree or
Sure.
market conditions or NAR lawsuits and litigation until the last year or two. And so now that's causing people sometimes to feel like they are the experts in certain areas, or they're misunderstanding things, or they're not seeing the full picture. And so it's always important that whenever my clients have hesitations, I sit with them and we talk about it. We deep dive into the entire thing. And we highlight every aspect to see are you just nervous because it's your first time and it's a big deal? Or are you nervous at purchasing at the top of your pre-approval at that monthly payment? Maybe you adjust downward a little bit. Maybe we look at homes that are slightly lower value. You have a little more wiggle room. You're less nervous about making that shift from what you're paying in rent to what you're buying or, paying in a mortgage. So, or looking in an area with a lower tax rate. So.
No, I think you're right as far as it's the herd mentality. And what's interesting, and I want to get your opinion on this. I've said this 100 times on this podcast, but I feel like real estate is the only thing. So the analogy I give is like if I were to ask somebody, hey, what do you know about cars? Do you know how to change oil? Can you change tires? Can you change brakes? To openly admit that you know nothing about automobiles, or you hear people say, I'm not very tech savvy, like you said it, right? You have no shame in saying something like that. But you say that about real estate, or better yet, if you ask someone, hey, what do you know about real estate? Everybody's got something to say. Everybody's a pro. I mean, my clients know more about mortgages than I do. I legitimately, before you got here, I thought I was going to have to end this call. I was on a Zoom call doing a buyer's consultation with a real estate agent, and this guy was going on and on about his debt-to-income ratio and all of this stuff that is just so unnecessary for the average client to know.
Yeah.
And he was basically like telling me about my job, and it was just nuts. And real estate is the only business that I feel like that exists in, where if you don't know about real estate, like, well, are you serious? Like, let me tell you.
Yeah.
And going back to the herd mentality, I had a buyer recently tell me that, we weren't even under contract on a property, and is just putting the screws to me on a daily basis about rates and payments and what's your rate and what is this going to be? And I finally was like, what is going on? Like, if you can't trust me or you feel like I'm going to be more expensive, like there's other lenders out there, maybe we're not a good fit. And you know what she said to me? She said, Matt, you have to understand, when I buy this home, I'm going to have friends and family that are going to ask me directly, like, what kind of loan did you get? What was your interest rate? So on and so forth. And if I were to say, oh, I didn't really do much research, and, I just had this guy and I liked him and I trusted him, my friends and my family would look at me like I was crazy. And so that's the other piece of it, is like there is some shame
For sure.
in like, well, what rate did you get?
Yeah.
Like, first of all, what business of that is anyone else's? But like, I guess we talk about that. And then it's like, if you don't have like the lowest rate at the dinner table, like you're the idiot.
You didn't do enough shopping around.
Right. It's weird. It's a weird thing. It's a really weird thing. Because again, like, nobody teases anybody for driving an overpriced luxury vehicle. Like, a Mercedes-Benz does not get you to your job any better or faster than your Toyota RAV4. And so when someone wildly overpays for a status symbol, nobody teases them. But if you overpay for your home or your mortgage or anything along those lines, you're an idiot. You're an idiot. And I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't think I don't get it either. It's one of those things that.
You bought a home now? Ooh, rates are high. Gross. Ick. Like, what?
And it's one of those things that I wish it was predictable. If I had a crystal ball that I could predict every shift in the market, I wouldn't be having to do any of the running around I'm doing. But that's not a reality. And nobody knew, with COVID, nobody was expecting that shift. And
Right.
there's certain markets now that are seeing those price increases that they didn't see during COVID because people weren't moving to those areas in flocks.
Right.
And so the trends are very hyper specific and hyper local on what's going on in that area, the demand of that area, the growth, all of these other factors, and we can't control that.
Well, and there's always a give and take too, right? So like the give and take, what I mean is I remember talking to clients back in 2020 and 2021 where interest rates were at like 2.5%, and they're like, oh, I don't want to buy now. All these homes are so overpriced. This is ridiculous. Then rates go up and property values now, it's like a total buyer's market. You're getting everything on sale, and they're like, yeah, rates are too high. So let me get this straight. You want low rates, low property values, like it just,
no competition.
Right, and no competition. There is always a give and take. So to the same point, I actually had a client, I was very surprised by this, who contacted me when interest rates went up, and they're like, because I always ask every single client I meet, what has made you decide to buy right now? And their response was, interest rates are a little bit higher, so there's little to no competition when we find a property, and we don't want to feel pressure. We want to be able to get inspections. We want to be able to take our time in making a decision. So this environment, although interest rates are quote unquote higher than what they were before, this is exactly what we've been waiting for. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting. I, applaud them for their honesty. And I thought, I don't think anybody thinks that way, but that's great. So yeah, that give and take in terms of the market, those that are waiting and all of those types of things. Remember, you're never going to get everything. And I think it all comes down to appetite in respect to what is your appetite in regards to buying a home. Do you want low rates, but then lots of competition? You're going to have to move quickly and make quick decisions. Or do you want to get a deal, and do you want to take your time, and do you want to feel confident that, you're getting everything you want except for the interest rate?
And then you can refinance down the line.
Hopefully
get the, you don't know when the rates will be where they'll be, but at some point, hopefully you'd be able to lock in something.
I was very
doable.
careful with this in 2021 when interest rates first started to creep up, and you had real estate agents and lenders alike speaking in what I would consider to be almost absolutes that they were going to be able to refinance and, anywhere between 6 to 12 to 24 months. Well, we are approaching over 36 months right now with interest rates being where they are.
Yeah.
And I feel sorry for the people who might have been led to believe that a refinance opportunity was around the corner, because I am always very mindful of that. And I say, hey, listen, ideally we want to see you, refinance. You're getting a great deal on this property, but when that opportunity will come, I never am like, I can tell you what I think might happen, but it's only an opinion.
And you want to be sure that the client is comfortable with the current monthly mortgage payment,
Sure.
et cetera, at that higher rate. Because
Correct.
like you said, it could be months, years, whatever before that lower interest rate comes.
Right. What else do you think that people need to know? Can you believe we're already approaching an hour?
Wow, it's
Goes
time
quick,
flies
right?
when you're having fun.
Exactly. What else do we need to know about you or your business?
Wow, I feel like we did a really good job at encompassing a lot of the areas.
Do you have any events or anything that you're doing here over the next couple of weeks?
Yes. So this one is actually super, super last minute. It's actually going to be tomorrow. So.
Well, that we probably won't make tomorrow.
That's
It'll be
a little bit.
Is there anything coming up in the next 5+ days that you'd want to bring up?
Actually, yes. No, so November 8th, there is an event. It's a charitable event. It's for an organization called Backpack Friends that does similar like food weekend donations, where you send them home with kids. And so they're doing a holiday vendor event. I'm going to have a booth there, giving out my freebies.
Nice.
And all of my
What kind of freebies are we talking about here?
So various things. I'll theme them based on the month. So for instance, in my backpack, I have a little like candy bag for you when we're done with
nice.
A little note on the front that says always ready to carve out time for your business with a, pumpkin. So I do a lot of corny stuff, but very themed to the month.
Okay.
And I'll do little flower seed packets with my business cards anytime I hand those out as just a little added conversation starter, and just the small things stand out. So I don't expect a client to work with me because I gave them some flower seeds. But if you're adding value in multiple ways and you're making people feel thought of and good, to me it's a win-win. And I'm doing things in a way that are very low cost, so I'm not stressing or holding my breath or having any pressure on, is that seed going to turn into anything, or is it just going to make somebody happy?
Right.
Either way, it works for me.
I love that. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to come on. Do not be a stranger. Make sure you get back on here. I got tons of stuff that we could talk about that's real estate related, and we can do updates and all that kind of stuff and have fun. And then once you get out of here, make sure you say hello to everybody. As you can hear, Mr. Kemps gets pretty rowdy. I can hear him in my office over there. But yeah, every Friday is barbecue and mingle. We do this every single Friday. So I actually have to check the smoker because we've got a bunch of beef chuck that is smoking. So if you are available, grab a plate and we'll chat some more.
Awesome. And if you ever want to have a segment on property taxes, I didn't go
Let's
too
do it.
deep into that because it's a little heavy and
Next time,
intense, but next time.
book and we will make that a reality. Thanks
Awesome.
again.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.